Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
The Diary of a CEO. Love that book.
Yeah, and it's packed with so many great insights, and we thought Law 30, which is all about building great teams, would be a great place to start.
Especially since Bartlett uses Sir Alex Ferguson as an example.
Exactly. I mean, who better to learn about building winning teams than the legendary manager of Manchester United?
I think a lot of people might be surprised to hear that Ferguson's approach wasn't just about tactics and strategy on the field.
It was more about building the right culture, wasn't it?
Absolutely. He
Yeah.
was obsessed with it. He even said, the most important thing at Manchester United is the culture of the club.
I read that story Bartlett tells about Patrice Evra
Oh, yeah.
when Ferguson was recruiting him.
What was it? Met him in some airport back room, right?
Yeah, and apparently looked him dead in the eyes and asked,
Are you willing to die for this club?
intense, right?
That's Ferguson for you. He wanted players who were fully committed, not just talented, but totally bought into the team's ethos.
And you know, it's interesting because now we have all this research about team dynamics and performance.
And it all points back to what Ferguson knew instinctively: culture matters.
It really does. And he wasn't afraid to make tough decisions to protect that culture.
Even if it meant letting go of some big names.
Yeah, David Beckham, Roy Keane, Ruud van Nistelrooy, these were superstars.
But if they weren't the right fit culturally, they were out.
Rio Ferdinand, another player under Ferguson, said, the man just saw something early.
It's like he had this radar for spotting potential problems before they even surface.
So building a strong culture is one thing, but actively protecting it is just as important.
And one of the biggest threats to any team's culture is negativity.
Bartlett actually quotes Richard Branson and Barbara Corcoran on this.
Both of them emphasize how damaging it can be to have toxic people on your team.
Corcoran's quote really stuck with me. She said, these people are thieves. In the night, they take your energy away.
And it's not just anecdotal. There's research to back this up.
Right. The Harvard Business Review found that employees were way more likely to engage in misconduct if they were exposed to a coworker with a history of bad behavior.
So it really is contagious.
Bartlett even tells this story about a researcher named Will Phelps,
Okay.
whose wife noticed a huge difference in her office when one particular coworker was out sick.
Let me guess. Everyone was happier and more productive.
Exactly. They were more collaborative, more helpful. Even the music was different.
But as soon as that coworker came back,
The negativity returned. It's amazing how just one person can impact the whole dynamic of a team.
it really is food for thought. Makes you think about who you're surrounding yourself with.
Absolutely. And that brings us to this really interesting framework that Bartlett introduces in his book. He calls it the 3 bars framework, and it's directly inspired by Ferguson's approach.
Ah, yes. The 3 bars, this is where things get really practical.
So let's break it down for our listeners. What are these 3 bars all about?
So, the whole framework centers around one key question. If everyone in the organization had the same cultural values, attitude, and level of talent as this employee, would the bar, the average, be raised, maintained, or lowered?
So you're not just looking at someone's individual performance, but their overall impact on the team.
Exactly. It's about understanding their potential to either elevate the group or drag it down.
And Bartlett actually visualizes this in the book with a graph plotting hypothetical employees based on this question.
It's really helpful to see how those 3 categories emerge: the bar raisers, the maintainers, and then the lowers.
And of course, this doesn't mean building a team of clones. Diversity is still super important.
Of course, you want different perspectives and backgrounds, but the key is finding people who are all aligned on those core values and that shared commitment to excellence.
It's kind of like building a house. You need different types of skills, but everyone needs to be working from the same blueprint.
I like that analogy. And what's great about this framework is that you can apply it at every stage of team building.
From hiring to promotions to even those tough decisions about letting someone go.
Right. It helps you make those decisions with more clarity and conviction.
We should definitely dive deeper into how this framework works in practice.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back after a quick break. Okay, so let's talk about how we can actually use this 3 bars framework when building a team.
So let's say you're in the hiring process.
Right.
And you have a candidate who looks amazing on paper.
Perfect resume.
Yeah.
Tons of experience, great references.
But as you talk to them,
You start noticing some red flags?
maybe they're a little too critical of their former employer.
Or they seem overly focused on individual achievements rather than the success of the team.
Those are the kinds of subtle cues that can tell you if someone might actually lower the bar, even if they're individually successful.
So it's about looking beyond those surface level qualifications.
Exactly.
Mhm.
You need to assess whether someone is a cultural fit. whether they have the potential to elevate the team as a whole.
And the three bars framework can help you do that.
It can also help you identify those bar raisers, the people who inspire and elevate everyone around them.
The ones who set a higher standard, even if they're not in a formal leadership role.
And once you have those bar raisers in place, the framework can guide your decisions on promotions and development.
So you're not just promoting based on individual performance metrics.
Right. You're also considering their impact on the team's culture, their ability to inspire others, to embody those values you're trying to cultivate.
And there's the other side of the coin. Those times when you have to let someone go.
Which is never easy.
But sometimes it's necessary to protect the team from a toxic influence.
And the three bars framework can help you make those tough calls with more clarity and confidence.
Instead of getting caught up in whether someone is hitting their individual targets.
You ask yourself, is this person raising the bar, maintaining it, or lowering it?
And if the answer is consistently lowering it,
then it might be time to make a change, however difficult it might be.
It's about creating space for those bar raisers to shine, to step into leadership roles and shape the team's culture.
It's a continuous process of evaluation and adjustment, always striving to create a team that's greater than the sum of its parts.
You know, this whole conversation reminds me of gardening.
Oh, how so?
Where you're cultivating the right conditions for your team to thrive, pruning away the things that might hinder their growth, and nurturing those elements that allow them to flourish.
I love that analogy. It's about creating an environment where everyone can reach their full potential.
And it's not just about finding those star players.
Right. It's about recognizing the value of every single person on the team and making sure they're all aligned and working towards a common goal.
Bartlett actually points out that the word company comes from the Latin word companio,
which means
one who breaks bread with another.
Yeah.
So at its core, a company is a group of people united by a common purpose, sharing not just their work, but also a sense of community.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. It's about more than just individual success. It's about creating something meaningful together.
And I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners today.
Definitely. Building a great team starts with understanding the power of culture, defining those shared values, and having the courage to uphold them, even when it's tough.
And it's about each individual taking ownership of their role in shaping that culture, asking themselves, am I a bar raiser or am I lowering the bar?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves regularly, whether we're leading a team, working on a project, or just interacting with our colleagues and friends.
Because ultimately, building a great team is an ongoing process.
It requires constant attention, courage, and a willingness to learn and grow together.
But the rewards, both personally and professionally, are immeasurable.
So well said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into building great teams. We'll see you next time. So it sounds like building a great team really is a journey.
It is. It's not something you just do once and then you're done.
It's about constantly learning and adapting and making sure everyone is on the same page.
Exactly. And remembering that everyone on the team has something valuable to contribute.
It's about finding those unique strengths and then figuring out how to weave them all together.
Bartlett actually uses a really interesting analogy in the book. He talks about how a company is like an orchestra.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Each musician has their own instrument and their own part to play.
But when they all come together under the guidance of a conductor, they create something truly beautiful and harmonious.
And that's what we're aiming for with our teams, right?
Absolutely. We want to create that synergy, that sense of shared purpose and accomplishment.
So what advice would you give to our listener today who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by all of this?
Well, I think the first step is to just take a deep breath.
Yeah. Don't try to do everything at once.
Start by focusing on those core values. What do you want your team to stand for? What kind of culture do you want to create?
Once you have a clear vision in mind,
Yeah.
you can start to put the pieces in place.
And remember, building a great team is a marathon, not a sprint.
It takes time and patience and a willingness to learn and grow along the way.
But the rewards are so worth it.
Absolutely. When you have a team that's truly aligned and working together towards a common goal, there's nothing you can't achieve.
I couldn't agree more. It's about creating something bigger than yourself, something that leaves a lasting impact on the world.
And that's what makes it all so exciting, isn't it?
It really is. It's about finding that sweet spot where individual passions and collective purpose intersect.
Where everyone feels valued, supported, and empowered to do their best work.
And when you find that magic happens.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into building great teams.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you.
Likewise. And to our listeners, Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
Remember, building a great team starts with a single step. So go out there and make it happen.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.